Tonight, when you unlock your phone because there is nothing else to do, boredom will not arrive. A video will arrive first, then another one, then a message, a headline, a tiny red number, a clip of someone cooking, a stranger arguing, a joke you barely understand, and a thing you keep watching anyway. It feels like you are avoiding boredom. But the stranger truth is that boredom may be trying to reach you, and an entire machine has been built to stop it before it can speak. That is why quiet feels suspicious now. That is why waiting in line feels broken. That is why 30 seconds without stimulation can feel less like rest and more like withdrawal. What changed? Your brain did not suddenly become weak. Your attention did not suddenly become lazy. A very old human signal met a very modern business model. Boredom used to be a doorway. Now it is treated like a bug. For most of human life, boredom was not a failure. It was information. It told you that your current situation was not giving your mind enough meaning, challenge, novelty, or control. It was uncomfortable, but it had a job. It pushed you to explore. It pushed you to imagine. It pushed you to move from passive waiting into active choosing. A bored child invents a game with a stick. A bored worker looks for a better method. A bored mind wanders into a memory, a worry, a plan, a joke, a question, or an idea that did not exist a minute ago. Boredom is not empty. It is a signal that the mind wants a better target. But your phone offers something much easier than a better target. It offers relief. The moment boredom appears, the screen gives your brain a button. Not a solution, a button. Open the app, refresh the feed, check the message, watch one short video. Let the machine choose the next feeling for you. The first trick is speed. Boredom needs a little time to become useful. It needs a pause long enough for your mind to notice itself. But the modern feed is designed to arrive before that pause finishes forming. The uncomfortable silence starts, and the machine fills it. Not with meaning, with motion. This is why boredom feels different now. It is no longer just a feeling inside you. It is a market opportunity outside you. Every empty moment in your day can be converted into a tiny session. Every tiny session can become data. Every piece of data can train a system to catch you faster next time. This does not require an evil villain, it only requires an incentive. If a platform makes money from attention, then boredom becomes dangerous. Boredom is the moment when you might leave, you might look up, you might talk to someone, you might think, you might stop producing signals. So the platform learns to intercept boredom before it turns into choice. This is where the old science enters the new machine. In the 20th century, psychologist B.F. Skinner studied how behavior changes when rewards arrive unpredictably. In simple terms, if a reward comes every single time, the mind learns the pattern quickly. But if the reward comes sometimes, unpredictably, the behavior can become much harder to stop. That pattern is called variable reinforcement. It is one reason slot machines are so powerful. You pull the lever and usually nothing special happens, but sometimes there is a win. The uncertainty keeps the hand moving. The next pull might be the one. Your feed works with the same emotional shape. Scroll. Nothing. Scroll. A mildly funny clip. Scroll. A boring ad. Scroll. A message that makes you feel wanted. Scroll. A video that feels exactly like your private thought. The reward is not constant. It is variable. That is the point. A feed that was perfectly good every time would become predictable. A feed that was bad every time would be abandoned. But a feed that is sometimes amazing, sometimes annoying, sometimes personal, and sometimes strange keeps your brain asking one small question. What comes next? That question is the hook. And the hook is not only in the content, it is in the design. Infinite scroll removes the stopping point. Autoplay removes the decision to continue. Notifications create tiny emergencies. Read receipts create social pressure. Typing dots create suspense. The pull to refresh gesture turns waiting into a little gamble, as if your thumb is asking the machine to deal another card. None of this forces you. That is why it works. It offers a way out of boredom so quickly that the choice barely feels like a choice. And once your brain gets used to instant rescue, boredom starts to feel worse than it used to. Not because boredom changed, because your tolerance changed. Think about a quiet elevator ride. 10 seconds, 20 seconds, nothing happens. Your hand moves toward your pocket almost automatically. Not because there is something important waiting, because the absence itself now feels loud. The mind has learned that emptiness can be patched, so emptiness starts to feel like a problem. In 2014, psychologist Timothy Wilson and his colleagues published a famous study in Science called Just Think. Participants were asked to sit alone in a room with nothing to do but think for several minutes. Many found it surprisingly unpleasant. In one version of the experiment, some participants even chose to give themselves a mild electric shock rather than simply sit with their own thoughts. That result became famous because it felt absurd, but it also felt familiar. The study did not prove that humans hate thinking. It showed something more uncomfortable. Unstructured attention can be hard. A mind with no external object can become restless, messy, and unpredictable. Now place that restless mind inside a world where an external object is always one tap away. The phone does not need to create the discomfort. It only needs to be present when the discomfort appears. Then it becomes the fastest exit. This is why boredom is not disappearing evenly. It is not that every part of life became more exciting. Waiting is still waiting. Work is still repetitive. School can still drag. Chores still exist. The difference is that boredom no longer has to unfold. It gets interrupted at the first sign of discomfort. You do not experience the full arc. You experience the alarm, then the escape. And because you escape so quickly, you never discover what boredom was trying to turn into. Sometimes it turns into rest. Sometimes it turns into irritation that tells you something in your life needs attention. Sometimes it turns into creativity, but not the glamorous kind where lightning strikes and a perfect idea appears. More often it becomes a slow mixing process, where old thoughts bump into each other because nothing else is crowding the room. That slow mixing is fragile. It cannot compete with a feed built from millions of tiny tests. A platform does not need to understand your soul. It only needs to measure your behavior. What made you stop? What made you swipe away? What made you re-watch? What made your thumb hesitate? What did people similar to you watch after this? What time of night do you become easier to pull back in? The machine does not know you like a friend. It knows you like a pattern, and patterns are enough. This is the second trick. Your feed does not only fill boredom, it personalizes the escape from boredom. A modern feed can. One person gets outrage, another gets beauty, another gets gossip, another gets productivity, another gets conspiracy, another gets jokes so fast and layered that the confusion becomes part of the pleasure. The feed does not have to choose the best content in the world. It has to choose the next content that keeps your boredom from becoming stronger than your curiosity. That is a very specific job, and it is getting better. Gloria Mark, a researcher at the University of California, Irvine, has spent years studying attention in digital environments. In her book, Attention Span, she describes how often people shift focus while using screens and how costly those shifts can feel. Each switch can seem small, a tab, a ping, a glance, a check, but together they train the mind to expect interruption. After enough interruption, stillness can feel unnatural. The mind starts craving change before it has finished processing what is already there. This is why a long article can feel heavy even when you care about the topic. This is why a movie at home can feel too slow while a chain of tiny clips feels effortless. This is why you can be tired of your phone and still reach for it. Your brain is not always seeking pleasure. Sometimes it is seeking the next shift. A shift gives relief. A shift gives novelty. A shift gives the feeling that something is happening even when nothing meaningful is happening. That feeling can become a substitute for progress. This is where boredom becomes confused with failure. If you are not stimulated, maybe you are wasting time. If you are not consuming, maybe you are falling behind. If you are not reachable, maybe you are missing something. If you are not posting, learning, reacting, optimizing, or watching, maybe life is happening somewhere else without you. That fear has a name in everyday language: missing out. But underneath it is something deeper. A world of infinite updates teaches your brain that the present moment is never complete. There might be a better one underneath your thumb. So you check. Then you check again. The philosopher and psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi became known for studying flow, the state where attention becomes deeply absorbed in a meaningful challenge. Flow is not passive comfort. It often appears when skill and difficulty meet in the right balance. Too hard, and you feel anxious. Too easy, and you feel bored. Modern platforms exploit this balance in a strange way. They make the action easy, but the reward uncertain. Scrolling requires almost no skill, but the next item might be funny, shocking, useful, beautiful, or personally validating. Low effort, possible reward, again and again. This is not flow. Real flow gives attention a shape. The feed gives attention a drip. This is why the phrase killing time is so revealing. When you say you are killing time, it sounds harmless. But the time being killed is often the exact space where your mind could have caught up with your life. The space after a conversation, the space before sleep, the space on a walk, the space between one task and another. These used to be mental transition zones, little bridges. Your brain used them to digest what just happened and prepare for what came next. Now many of those bridges have billboards on them, and the billboards are alive. They learn, they adapt, they follow. That does not mean every distraction is bad. Entertainment is human. Play is human. Jokes, stories, music, games, and gossip have always existed because people have always needed relief. The problem is not that you enjoy stimulation. The problem is that stimulation has become automatic. When relief is always available, discomfort loses its chance to become information. You may never find out whether you are lonely, tired, curious, angry, under-challenged, overstretched, or simply in need of a walk, because each signal gets covered by the same glowing rectangle. Boredom becomes a single category. Fix this feeling. So the phone fixes it. For a minute, then the feeling returns, slightly less clear than before. The counterintuitive twist is that boredom may not be the enemy of a meaningful life. It may be one of the ways a meaningful life asks for your attention. Boredom says, "This is not enough." The feed says, "Here is more." Those are not the same answer. More is not always better. More can be a way to avoid asking what enough would even mean. That is why the inability to be bored can make life feel strangely thinner, even when it is filled with content. You can see more videos, hear more opinions, learn more facts, save more posts, follow more people, and still feel like your mind has less room inside it. Because attention is not just a container. It is how experience becomes yours. If every quiet moment is rented out to a machine, your inner life does not vanish all at once. It becomes harder to hear. Your own thoughts arrive later. Your own preferences get mixed with what the system predicts you will prefer. Your own curiosity gets trained to wait for the next prompt. This is the personal mirror. You may think the battle is between discipline and laziness, but the deeper battle is between interruption and interpretation. Discipline says, "Stop looking at your phone." Interpretation asks, "What was the phone helping you avoid?" That question is harder. Maybe it was boredom. Maybe it was uncertainty. Maybe it was a task with no clear first step. Maybe it was the awkward feeling of being alone with yourself. Maybe it was the fear that, without input, you would have to notice what your life actually feels like. The machine cannot answer that for you. It can only keep offering the next thing. This is why reclaiming boredom does not have to mean throwing your phone into the ocean or pretending modern life can become simple again. The goal is not purity. The goal is contact. Contact with the moment before the escape. That tiny moment matters. The moment when your hand reaches for the phone and you ask, What feeling just appeared? Not with judgment, with curiosity. That pause is small, but it changes the system. The feed depends on automatic movement. Boredom becomes useful again when the movement is no longer automatic. You can let one line be boring. You can let one elevator ride be empty. You can let one walk happen without a podcast. You can let one meal happen without a video. You can let your mind complain, wander, repeat itself, and slowly reveal what it was trying to say underneath the noise. At first, it may feel uncomfortable. That does not mean it is failing. It means the signal is coming back. Boredom is not always profound. Sometimes it is just boredom. Sometimes it is dull, annoying, and ordinary, but even ordinary boredom gives your attention back a choice. It lets your mind move from being pulled to being directed, and that is the part the machine cannot automate for you. It can recommend, it can predict, it can fill, but it cannot decide what your attention is for. Only you can do that. Tonight, when you unlock your phone because there is nothing else to do, maybe boredom will finally arrive, and this time you may let it in.